Hey everybody, welcome to Beaming Notes, and today we're going to look at the critical analysis, theme, and tone of the poem A Photograph by Shirley Toulson. Critical analysis. This poem seems to be a simple one at its surface, but it is certain that it has risen out of very complex emotions. There is a bitterness of loss, the sweet memories of the past, the realization of the brevity of human life, and the inability to justify death. The poet has had a very difficult time dealing with her mother's death. Perhaps she had been very close to her mother. That certainly seems to be the case going by this poem. It is clear that her mother used to share her innermost thoughts with the poet. The vice versa must have been true as well. In order to cope with this great loss, the poet takes recourse to all the wonderful memories she has of her mother, as well as old photographs of her mother and her extended family. The photograph and 3 memories serve her well. For just a few moments, she finds relief by looking at her mother's sweet face. This makes her realize that life is short, and hence we must cherish every moment we get to spend with our loved ones. She takes consolation from the fact that her mother had no great regrets about her own life. Even after all this, the poet cannot justify why her mother had to die and leave her behind. Death is an unavoidable circumstance. As soon as man is born, he is also condemned to a death sentence. We are all aware of this theoretically. Yet, when we see someone close to us dying, we feel that God has been unjust to us. This is exactly what the poet feels. However, she is unable to vocalize what effect her mother's death has had on her. She only says that it has left her speechless. Theme: contrast between planned past and unknown future. In this poem, the photograph represents a planned past. The way in which the children were dressed up to go to the beach was planned by their parents. Their arrangement within the photograph itself, with the tallest and the oldest girl in the middle, and the 2 shorter and younger ones at the side, was also meticulously planned. The way their smiles were captured by the uncle was also planned. As opposed to this, the family had no control over the children's future. As we read through the poem, we realize that the poet's mother must have been between the ages of 60 and 70 when she died. Considering the average life cycle of man, this is quite a young age to die. There was nothing the family could do to stop this death. Perhaps the poet's mother had been struck by some fatal disease, or perhaps she had died in an accident. In any case, there was no way that this grim future could have been avoided or predicted. The contrast between the joyful past and the scary future is therefore a wide one, and provides for much of the sadness that the poet exudes towards the end of this poem. Death leaves you speechless. The poet has been helpless to stop her mother's death. She has simply had to accept it. She misses the sound of her mother's voice and her loving words as well. The silence that the death has caused in her mother is also echoed in the poet herself. She cannot talk about how her mother's death has affected her. The silence that death brings in your loved ones also leaves you silent. Brevity of life. The poet's mother had been 12 years old when the picture was taken. She used to talk about that picture 20 or 30 years later. That is, she used to look back to her childhood at the age of 32 or 42. Perhaps she was going through a midlife crisis. In any case, she had begun to realize that she had started aging and that sooner or later she would have to die and leave the earth behind. She had realized that life is very short and that she should enjoy every moment as much as she had enjoyed such visits to the beach when she was a little girl. This is a realization that the poet also has. There is no way of knowing when your loved ones may suddenly leave your side. Hence, it is important to cherish every moment you have with them. This thought may also have been accompanied by the thought of her own death. The poet would also have to die one day, since no man is immortal. Before she died, she must live her life to the fullest and never let sorrow conquer her. Tone. The tone of this poem undergoes a great change from the beginning of the poem to its end. At first, the tone is both nostalgic and joyful, as the poet looks at an old photograph of a mother in her girlhood. The spirit of nostalgia continues as she recounts how her mother would often look at the photograph and reminisce about the day when it was taken. A tone of sadness creeps in when the poet compares the unchanging sea with the brevity of human life. At the very end of the poem, she becomes silent as she cannot vocalize how sad her mother's death has made her. Poetic devices. Rhyme scheme. The poet does not follow any identifiable rhyme scheme in this poem. Rhetorical devices. Synecdoche. This rhetorical device is used in many ways to represent one thing with the help of an entirely different one. In this poem, the poet used the device of synecdoche in form of part for whole in the 9th line. She writes the word feet, but she means the whole body. For the bodies of her mother and younger cousins are not immortal, but only alive for a short time on earth. Personification. This rhetorical device is used to bestow human qualities on something that is not human. In this poem, the poet uses the device of personification in the 19th line when she gives silence the ability to stop the poet from speaking.